In the early days of the Mormon faith, plural marriage was not just a lifestyle choice. It was considered a sacred commandment. Joseph Smith, the founder of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, first introduced the practice. He said it was a divine revelation. Following his death, leaders like Brigham Young championed it. They led the saints to the remote Utah territory. There, they hoped to build a new society, free from outside persecution. For them, polygamy was a core tenet of their religion, a principle they believed was essential for exaltation in the afterlife. It was a way to raise up seed unto God. This practice, however, put the Mormon community on a direct collision course with the rest of America. The United States in the 19th century had a very clear vision of itself. It was a nation built on specific social and moral foundations. Monogamous marriage was a cornerstone of that vision. The Republican Party even campaigned on a platform of eradicating the twin relics of barbarism, slavery and polygamy. The federal government did not just voice its disapproval, it took decisive legal action. The first major blow came with the Moral Anti-Bigamy Act of 1862. Enforcement was difficult. Lincoln was preoccupied with the Civil War. Prosecuting Mormons in Utah was not a priority. Things escalated with the Edmunds Act of 1882. It was far more aggressive. It criminalized cohabitation with more than one woman. Prosecutors no longer had to prove a marriage ceremony. They only needed to show a man living with multiple women. The act also stripped polygamists of the right to vote. It stripped them of the right to hold public office. It stripped them of the right to serve on juries. The most devastating weapon was the Edmunds-Tucker Act of 1887. It was designed to break the LDS Church. It disincorporated the church and let the government seize assets. All church property over $50,000 was forfeited. Temples, meeting houses, businesses. The impact was profound. Hundreds of Mormon men were arrested and imprisoned. Many went underground to avoid federal marshals. Families were torn apart. For decades, Utah had tried and failed to achieve statehood. Its petitions were repeatedly denied by Congress. The primary reason was always polygamy. Statehood was not just a symbolic goal, it was a practical necessity. It would give Utah voting representation in Congress, control over its own local affairs, the ability to elect its own officials without federal oversight. Facing relentless pressure, the LDS Church was at a breaking point. Its leaders were in prison or in hiding. Its finances were in ruins, with the government seizing its most valuable properties, including its sacred temples. In 1890, Church President Wilford Woodruff issued a statement that became known as the Manifesto. He announced that he would submit to the law of the land and advise church members to do the same. This declaration was the key that unlocked the door to statehood. With the manifesto in place, Utah was finally able to draft a state constitution that Congress would accept. A critical provision of that constitution was an irrevocable ordinance that explicitly banned polygamy forever. To become a state, Utah had to formally and permanently renounce the very practice that had defined its identity for half a century. The political and economic leverage exerted by the government had worked exactly as intended. Ultimately, the ban on polygamy in Utah was not a simple moral victory. It was a demonstration of raw political and economic power. The federal government used its authority to dismantle a rival power structure in the West. The LDS Church, with its unified social, political, economic system, was seen as a threat to federal sovereignty. By targeting polygamy, the government found a legally and socially acceptable way to break the church's hold over the territory. The moral arguments against plural marriage provided a convenient justification for a campaign that was, at its core, about control. Over time, the legal landscape has continued to evolve. While the Utah Constitution still forbids polygamy, the state's approach has softened. In 2020, Utah decriminalized polygamy among consenting adults, reducing it from a felony to a minor infraction, similar to a traffic ticket. This change acknowledges that the original harsh laws were driven by a 19th century power struggle rather than a timeless moral imperative. The focus of law enforcement today is on crimes associated with polygamy, like abuse, fraud, trafficking, not on the living arrangements of consenting adults. The real reason Utah banned polygamy was to gain statehood and end the federal government's war on the LDS Church. It was a political necessity, a forced compromise made under duress to ensure survival. The battle was framed in the language of morality, but it was fought with the weapons of law and economics. It was a story about power, control, and the forceful integration of a unique American subculture into the broader nation, leaving a complex and lasting legacy that Utah still navigates today.